You don't actually resist change because you're lazy. You resist it because your brain thinks change is dangerous. That sounds dramatic, but neurologically it's true. Your nervous system is designed to prioritize safety over improvement, familiarity over progress, and predictability over possibility. So when you try to change your routine, your habits, or even your thinking patterns, your mind doesn't celebrate. It hesitates. It slows you down. Sometimes it even creates discomfort strong enough to make you stop. Most people interpret that feeling as failure or lack of motivation. But what they're really feeling is protection. Your brain isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to keep you safe based on patterns it has learned over time. And here's the important part. The stronger your desire to change, the more alert your brain becomes. Not because change is bad, but because change is unfamiliar. And to your survival system, unfamiliar has always meant uncertain, and uncertain has always meant risk. This is why people often feel the most resistance right when they finally decide to improve their lives. You would expect motivation to make things easier. Instead, it often makes things feel heavier. That's because motivation activates intention, but intention activates awareness. And awareness shows your brain that something different is about to happen. The moment your mind detects difference, it starts monitoring. Monitoring creates tension. Tension creates hesitation, and hesitation feels like doubt. So what most people call a lack of discipline is actually a natural neurological response to perceived uncertainty. Your system is not broken. It is cautious. It prefers known discomfort over unknown outcomes. Even if the unknown outcome could be better, your brain cannot guarantee it will be. And when your brain cannot guarantee something, it defaults to safety mode. Safety mode does not care about your goals. It cares about stability. That's why resistance is strongest. Not when you fail, but when you try. Your mind works like a prediction machine. Every second of the day it is scanning your environment, comparing what is happening now to what has happened before. When things match your past experiences, your brain relaxes. When things don't match, it becomes alert. Change interrupts prediction, and interrupted prediction signals uncertainty. Uncertainty signals possible threat. This entire process happens automatically and usually outside your awareness. You don't consciously decide to resist change. Your nervous system decides first, and your thoughts come later to justify the feeling. That is why resistance feels emotional rather than logical. Logic belongs to your thinking brain. Resistance belongs to your survival brain. And survival systems always act faster than reasoning systems. They have to. They were designed that way long before conscious thought existed. So when you feel hesitation, delay, or heaviness while trying to change something, you are not witnessing weakness. You are witnessing your biology doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem is not resistance itself. The problem is how people interpret resistance. Most people assume that if something feels difficult, it must be wrong for them. They treat discomfort as a warning sign that they shouldn't continue. But discomfort is not always a signal to stop. Sometimes it is simply a signal that something is unfamiliar. Your brain uses sensation to communicate. Tightness, doubt, fatigue, hesitation, these are messages, not verdicts. Yet many people mistake these sensations for proof that they are incapable or unmotivated. That misunderstanding creates a second layer of resistance, self-judgment. Now, instead of just facing uncertainty, they are also fighting themselves. And that internal conflict drains energy faster than effort ever could. The irony is that the brain interprets internal conflict as another threat, so the more you fight your resistance, the stronger it becomes. Not because you are failing, but because your system is responding to perceived pressure. Pressure is one of the fastest ways to make change feel impossible. When you tell yourself you must change quickly, your brain hears urgency. Urgency signals danger. Danger activates stress responses. Stress responses narrow your focus and reduce your willingness to take risks. That is useful if you are escaping a real threat, but it is not useful when you are trying to grow. Growth requires openness. Stress creates contraction. So the harder you push yourself, the more your system tightens. And when your system tightens, progress feels heavier, slower, and more exhausting. This is why people often feel stuck right after they make a strong decision to improve. The decision itself creates pressure. The pressure creates tension. The tension creates resistance. And the resistance makes it feel like something is wrong. But nothing is wrong. You're simply watching your nervous system prioritize safety over speed. Many people believe they need more control in order to change. But the truth is that the need for control is often the very thing slowing them down. Control feels safe because it creates predictability. When you try to plan every step perfectly before acting, your brain relaxes temporarily because it thinks uncertainty has been reduced. But perfection is impossible, which means certainty is impossible. So your mind keeps searching for more information, more reassurance, more preparation. This creates a loop where action is constantly postponed in the name of readiness. It feels responsible, but it is actually avoidance wearing a logical disguise. Your brain is not trying to deceive you. It is trying to protect you from the discomfort of unpredictability. The more important the change feels, the more your system wants guarantees. And since guarantees rarely exist, hesitation grows stronger. Not because you lack courage, but because your brain is trying to eliminate risk. People often respond to resistance by trying to think their way out of it. They analyze, research, reflect, and plan. Thinking feels productive because it gives the illusion of movement, but thought alone does not calm the survival system. Your nervous system does not respond to logic the same way it responds to experience. You can understand something completely and still feel unable to do it. That is because understanding belongs to cognition, while resistance belongs to sensation. Insight can explain a feeling, but it cannot replace it. Your brain learns safety through repetition, not reasoning. This is why you can know exactly what you should do and still feel stuck doing it. Knowledge is not the same as permission. Permission is granted by your nervous system when it decides something is safe enough to attempt. And that decision is based on exposure, not explanation. The system changes through experience, not instruction. Another common misunderstanding is the belief that change requires more energy than staying the same. In reality, both require energy. But your brain calculates effort differently than you expect. Familiar actions are efficient because your nervous system has practiced them. New actions feel heavy because your brain must process more information. That extra processing creates the sensation of effort. It is not that change is harder, it is that change is newer. Novelty always requires more attention than routine, and attention is metabolically expensive. Your brain wants to conserve energy whenever possible, so it naturally prefers habits it already understands. This preference is not laziness, it is efficiency. The system is designed to automate anything repeated enough times. That is why old patterns feel easy, even when they are unhelpful. They cost less energy to run. So when new behaviors feel tiring, it does not mean they are wrong. It means they are not yet familiar. The beginning of change is almost always the hardest part. Not because the task is difficult, but because your brain has no reference point for it yet. Without a reference point, your system cannot predict what will happen. And when it cannot predict, it prepares for the worst just in case. That preparation shows up as hesitation, doubt, or delay. Once you begin, something important happens. Your brain gathers data. It learns that the action did not cause harm. That new information updates its prediction system. And when predictions become clearer, resistance decreases. This is why things often feel easier after you start, even if they seemed impossible before. The difficulty was never the task itself. The difficulty was the unknown. Starting is not hard because you are incapable. Starting is hard because your brain is cautious, and caution always appears strongest at the beginning. One part of you wants change. Another part wants stability. Both parts are trying to help you. The tension you feel is not dysfunction. It is negotiation. Your mind is balancing two priorities, improvement and safety. Improvement pulls you forward. Safety pulls you back. When these forces meet, friction is created. That friction is what people experience as feeling stuck. But stuck does not mean frozen. It means two systems are active at once. The thinking system imagines possibility. The survival system evaluates risk. Until your survival system feels sufficiently safe, it will slow the process down. Not to stop you permanently, but to monitor conditions. This is why forcing yourself rarely works long-term. Force increases perceived threat. Increased threat increases resistance, and increased resistance makes movement harder. The system is not refusing change, it is waiting for reassurance. Reassurance comes from experience, not pressure. External change is not what your brain fears most. Internal change is. Altering your behavior means altering your identity patterns. Your mind builds a sense of self from repeated experiences. When you act differently, your brain must update that identity model. Updating identity requires uncertainty, and uncertainty activates caution. Your system is not just asking, "Is this safe?" It is also asking, "Is this still me?" That question matters because identity provides stability. Stability helps your brain predict the world. When identity shifts, prediction becomes harder, so resistance appears to slow the process. This is not a rejection of growth, it is a request for reassurance. Your mind wants proof that the new version of you will still be safe, still be accepted, and still belong. Until it sees that evidence, it hesitates, not out of weakness, but out of protection. Small changes often succeed where big changes fail, because they do not alarm the nervous system. Large changes signal uncertainty. Small changes signal adjustment. Adjustment feels manageable. Manageable feels safe. When something feels safe, your brain allows it. Once allowed, repetition begins. Repetition teaches the nervous system that the action is not threatening. As familiarity grows, resistance fades. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes automatic. This is how habits are formed, not through force, but through exposure. The brain trusts what it experiences repeatedly. That trust is what reduces hesitation. So when progress seems slow, it is not failing, it is integrating. Integration is quiet. It does not feel dramatic, but it is powerful because it rewires prediction. And when prediction changes, behavior follows naturally. Urgency feels motivating in theory, but to your nervous system it often feels threatening. Deadlines, pressure, and high expectations can activate the same biological responses as danger. When those responses activate, your brain shifts into protection mode. Protection mode prioritizes caution, not creativity. It prioritizes certainty, not exploration. This is why people under pressure often feel mentally blocked, even when they know what they want to do. Their system is allocating resources towards safety rather than performance. Urgency can work temporarily, but it rarely works sustainably. Eventually, the nervous system pushes back, creating fatigue, avoidance, or emotional resistance. This is not failure. It is regulation. Your body is trying to return to equilibrium. Real change tends to occur when the system feels safe enough to stay open, not when it feels forced to comply. The safest state your brain knows is familiarity, even if that familiarity is uncomfortable. This creates a paradox. You can feel stuck in something you do not like and still feel resistant to leaving it. That is because your system values predictability more than preference. Predictability allows your brain to anticipate outcomes. Anticipation reduces threat. So your mind may choose a known discomfort over an unknown possibility simply because it can predict the known one. This is not irrational. It is adaptive. Your nervous system evolved to prioritize survival, not satisfaction. Satisfaction is optional. Survival is mandatory. So when you notice yourself staying in patterns you logically want to change, it does not mean you lack willpower. It means your brain is choosing predictability. Predictability feels safe, and safety always wins unless your system learns that something new is safe too. When people misunderstand resistance, they often mislabel themselves. They say they are lazy, inconsistent, weak, or unmotivated. But these labels describe behavior, not cause. They explain what is happening without explaining why it is happening. Once a person accepts a label, their brain begins to treat it as identity, and identity influences expectation. If you expect yourself to fail, your system prepares for failure. Preparation changes behavior. Behavior then reinforces the belief. This loop can make resistance feel permanent, but the label was never accurate to begin with. What looks like lack of effort is often lack of perceived safety. And safety is not something you command. It is something your nervous system detects. When it detects enough safety, action becomes easier. Not because you forced it, but because your system allowed it. Resistance is not an obstacle, it is feedback. It tells you your system is encountering something unfamiliar. That information is useful. It means your brain is paying attention. Attention is the first step in learning. Without attention, no change would ever occur. So resistance is not proof that you should stop. It is proof that your mind is monitoring. Monitoring means your system is engaged. Engagement means adaptation is possible. The goal is not to eliminate resistance. The goal is to understand it. When you understand it, you stop fighting it. And when you stop fighting it, the internal conflict decreases. Less conflict means less tension. Less tension means more capacity. And more capacity makes action easier. Resistance fades when prediction improves. Prediction improves when experience accumulates. This means the fastest way for resistance to shrink is not through motivation but through exposure. Each time you safely repeat an action, your brain updates its expectations. Updated expectations reduce uncertainty. Reduced uncertainty reduces caution. Gradually, what once felt risky begins to feel normal. At that point, effort decreases automatically. Not because you tried harder, but because your nervous system recalibrated. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Intensity can alarm the system. Consistency reassures it. Reassurance builds trust, and trust is what allows your brain to stop guarding against the action. When guarding stops, resistance disappears on its own. Force tries to override your nervous system. But your nervous system always outranks your willpower. You can override it briefly, but it will eventually restore balance. When it does, it often creates stronger resistance than before. This rebound effect is why people can maintain change for short bursts and then suddenly feel unable to continue. The system was never convinced it was safe. It was only complying temporarily. Compliance is not the same as adaptation. Adaptation happens when your brain accepts something as non-threatening. That acceptance cannot be forced. It must be learned. And learning requires repetition in conditions that feel safe enough to tolerate. So when force stops working, it is not a failure of discipline. It is a sign that your nervous system has not yet updated its prediction. There is always a turning point in change. It is the moment your brain stops treating an action as unfamiliar and starts treating it as known. You may not notice the exact moment it happens, but you will notice the effect. What once felt heavy begins to feel neutral. What once required effort begins to feel automatic. This shift is not dramatic. It is gradual. It happens quietly through repetition. The important thing to understand is that the turning point is neurological, not motivational. It occurs when your prediction system updates enough times to trust the action. Once trust is established, resistance is no longer necessary. The system no longer sees a threat, and when the brain no longer sees a threat, it stops holding you back. Most people believe change should feel exciting if it is right for them. But excitement is not a reliable signal of alignment. Excitement is a temporary emotional state. Safety is a biological state. Your brain prioritizes biology over emotion every time. So even if you feel excited about change mentally, Your nervous system may still react cautiously. That does not mean the change is wrong. It means your system has not learned it yet. Expecting change to feel comfortable immediately is like expecting a language to feel fluent the first time you speak it. Familiarity takes repetition. Repetition takes time. And time is what teaches your brain that something new is safe enough to continue. Instead of asking why change feels hard, it can be more useful to ask what your brain is trying to protect you from. That question shifts your perspective. It turns resistance from an enemy into information. Information can be understood, and what is understood becomes less intimidating. The moment resistance stops feeling like a threat, it starts feeling like data, and data can guide you, not by pushing you forward, but by showing you where your system still needs reassurance. Understanding this removes self-blame. You are not broken. You are adaptive. Your mind is not stopping you. It is stabilizing you. Stability is what allows growth to happen safely. So if change feels difficult, it does not mean you are failing. It means your brain is doing its job. It is checking, predicting, evaluating, and protecting. That process can feel slow, but it is intelligent. The same system that resists unfamiliar things is the system that eventually learns them. Resistance is simply the first stage of adaptation. It is not the end of the story. The end of the story is familiarity, and familiarity is created through repeated experience, not force. Once your brain recognizes something as safe, it no longer needs to resist it. And when resistance disappears, movement becomes natural. Not because you pushed harder, but because your system finally understood that it could.